Hello and welcome to Module 3 in our Cultural Competence series of videos here. And this one is on first of three of controversial topics, areas of discussion, or differences that we have with each other, political division. Now, we have seen this. If you haven't been living under a rock, you certainly have seen political division occur across our country, divisive statements, uh, lots of mud lashing all over the place, and just a tough political environment, really in many ways causing many of us to just turn away from the political discourse at all. Not a healthy response to that, and certainly um, caused a lot of consternation among people. So I bring this up. I bring up these three issues as examples in which we will experience differences between ourselves and the people we work with or work for, our clients, our neighbors, our family members, whatnot. This is applicable to every interaction that we have. All of this, every single one of these areas, the goal is relationship building. The goal is not to convince somebody or to right the wrong or to lash out or get even or prove somebody wrong or anything like that. The idea behind the underlying value, the underlying goal of all of this is, here's this person very different than I am. In this case, well, in all of these cases, um, having different values, norms, and expectations that I do, a multicultural experience, really. What can I do to ensure that I have a positive relationship building process going on? So here we take on political division. And the kind of approach I took at this is to provide, even though this might not, getting into politics, I hear it all the time, people don't get into politics. You have to understand politics, the term from a sociology, really refers not to the sort of national thing that we're hearing on the news all the time, but the ways in which people interact to negotiate power. That is politics. So politics exists between two friends. Politics exists at your workplace. Politics exists between that uneven and uneven interaction that you're having with your clients. So politics is a very useful term. What we get in order to bring, when we bring that down from the national, statewide dialogue down to the individual, becomes a little bit more palatable, and it becomes a little bit, actually, I believe it becomes a little bit easier to deal with. And we can borrow from the definitions we get about those large differences to understand the differences between us and another person, between you and another person. We can use those labels: Democrat, Republican, liberal, conservative, those kinds of things. We can say, where is this person coming from? Again, the goal is for you to understand where they're coming from. And as you make that step, hopefully they'll also make the step to try and understand where you're coming from. Not always, but we're not worried about what other people do. We're worried about what I do or what you do yourself. So as I'm going through the lesson here, there's a little bit here about animosity and the emotional experience we get when we encounter someone whose political ideology is very different than ours. It can be scary, it can be threatening, it can be, depending on where you fall and all that stuff, it can be, it's been violent, and we need to validate that that's there, that there has been, over the last few years, a certain raising of the temperature, let's say, on some of these issues. Now, when we think about things that are political, and like I said, we're going to borrow those terms to actually describe the way in which they apply to one-on-one conversations, one-on-one relationship building. And the next section I go to, is it political? It is. It is always. Every interaction that we're having with somebody is political. And I look at the phrases that we have from our society: left versus right, liberal versus conservative, Democrats versus Republicans, getting an understanding of those terms and how they apply to individual interactions that we have. So I go through the definitions here of left versus right. Left-wing ideas associated with terms such as freedom, equality, fraternity, rights, progress, reform, and internationalism. Right-wing ideas associated with terms such as authority, hierarchy, order, duty, tradition, reaction, and nationalism. Just in this example, I'm not going to review the others, but just in this example, you can see that for you as an individual, there are probably issues on which you are more left and issues in which you are more right. Now, there are people that are all right and they're all left. I understand that. But many of us who are thinking about the everyday sort of things that we have going on in our world will probably vacillate. Like in some circumstances, yeah, I'm really into an authority being in charge of this. And there's other times it'd be like, no, I really need to just let people do what they want to do. You know, those kinds of things you may, depending on the topic. And that's an important thing to grasp when we are meeting people, that we don't engage in the generalization that this individual, because they have a left viewpoint on a topic or a right viewpoint on a topic, that comes as a package deal, that everything must be on that side or everything's on that other side. That is simply not true. That's, as long as you're open into that dialogue, you will find that out. That has been my experience. Granted, I have met some people where, wow, almost everything seems to be on the right, or almost everything seems to be on the left. And that's okay too, but that has been the minority. So in this lesson, you're learning about those terms: left, right, liberal, conservative, Republican, Democrat. We see these as cultural differences. Now, keeping in mind, when we think about cultural competence, that's a set of values. And that set of values, as I talk about at the end, is somewhat liberal. It's a liberal perspective. Cultural competence is a somewhat liberal perspective. So it leans a little bit that way. The field itself leans that way. I'll get to that more in a moment. But here we have, remember, valuing diversity. So having left, right, conservative, liberal, Democrat, Republican viewpoints in any sort of discussion is a good thing. It's a good thing. We invest in that. Capacity for cultural self-assessment for my own biases, being conscientious about the dynamics that we are in a multicultural conversation. There are things I don't understand about people's perspective, not because they're right or wrong, although I may have opinions about that, but because they are coming from a different cultural viewpoint than I am. That this stuff is institutionalized. We experience it in our policies, in our practices, and we approach our service delivery always from this perspective of cultural competence. So then I have this list, and there's a little video, how to talk to people who disagree with you politically. And again, we have this list: focus on the people, not the politics, and then some tips are there. Find common ground. Stick to the facts and avoid confrontation. Be an advocate rather than an opponent. And pick your battles. Remember, we're trying to build relationships. Picking battles exists within every relationship. Picking battles. Comes to the assessment, the discussion, I want to focus. I'm going to take the two terms of liberal and conservative, is from your understanding from this lesson, can you see, whichever way you're starting, if you're liberal, if you consider yourself more liberal, then consider what are some cultural conservative values that are important and useful and maybe right in mental health. If you're coming from a cultural perspective of conservative, what are some liberal ideas that are okay, right, and the way to go? That again, finding that way, that recognizing in this discussion that depending on what we're talking about, we're going to have either liberal or conservative, or things that have been categorized as liberal and conservative. So less about liberal and conservative people and liberal and conservative ideas. We separate those so the person remains a person, and the ideas can be then discussed. So we're gonna keeping in mind this needs to be an open, honest, and sensitive discussion. This is not a time for your soapbox. Soapboxing is okay, but it has to be done in a way that is accepting to the purpose of this discussion, which is, like everything, to build relationships. I then go into, for the assignment, what I want you to do is take an issue within the mental health system and approach that issue from left, right, conservative, liberal, Republican, Democrat. I want you to look these things up. This is a research project. What is particularly if you're looking at the Democrat and Republican thing, what are the Democrats saying about this? What's their party platform? What is the party platform for the Republicans? Gathering that information and writing that out on a document so you understand the positions, the points of view on one issue. It can be medication, it can say deinstitutionalization, big ones, the value of case management, medical approaches versus psychosocial rehab. What about people, work? Where does work fall in terms of motivations for people with mental illness living in the community? Anyone, pick the issue that you think you have the most angst about, or the most concern about, or you're most interested in, and then this is almost as if we were preparing for a debate. People who debate research both sides, and they find the platforms of each one of these. That's essentially what I'm looking for in that assignment. So we have the discussion, sharing our ideas about conservative, what was it? Yeah, conservative and liberal in terms of perspectives within the mental health field, and then picking one topic and writing that paper with all those different perspectives. A total of 6 different perspectives on that one topic. So that's all good. Remember, title page, you have the left-right perspective, liberal-conservative perspective, Democrat-Republican perspective, and then a summary that shows an appreciation for the diversity of ideas. That's it. And that's it for this particular lesson. And I will see you on the next lesson.